Holy City Center Radio, this is episode 344, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, February 21st, 2025. Hello and welcome to all of you out there, and to one person in particular. Happy birthday to my brother, my little brother, which sounds weird to say when I'm in my 40s, and he's getting pretty close with his birthday. But in any event, happy birthday to, I guess I should just say younger brother. Little brother sounds like you should stop calling your brother little brother and big brother, at a certain age. In any event, I hope you all had a great week. If you're looking for plans this weekend, holycitycenter.com/calendar is the place to go. And you can also, if you're not looking for anything this weekend, you can keep scrolling through the calendar. You can also sort it by a particular venue that you're interested in seeing their upcoming schedule. You can also break it down by category, so you can see all sorts of events in all different ways. You can also send an event you want to be reminded about directly to your phone or your online calendar. So that's why many people are saying it's Charleston's best events list. Don't ask around though. But shameless self-promotion aside, it's time to get into the news. So there's been a lot going on the national level, as you know. We've talked about it here and there, and I've got some stories that are all tied in on the local level about what we're hearing about nationally, specifically the cuts to funding or a freeze on certain fundings that happened and is currently been unfrozen temporarily. We'll get to that, as well as what's talked about could be coming. All these different changes, and of course, all the layoffs and firings that are going on as well. We're hearing anecdotally different people that are affected by these cuts, these firings, these changes in funding, and we're also here seeing it's repeating enough where this is a direct effect. This isn't just a couple people here and there. This is affecting a lot of people, and over time some of these things can really expand to affect a lot of people, especially when it comes to things like research funding for, say, medical research. If something's paused, that could delay a cure for something or an advancement in technology, and who knows how many people missed out because of that pause or complete cut in funding. So I'm going to go over, like I said, all these stories are all kind of similar. The first one differs a little bit, but the one I'm about to talk about. But we're all on that same level where we're starting to see slowly but surely things, coming down to our state, to our county, to our city, and seeing real world effects already, or at least a preview of things that could be if funding is cut for certain programs. But first, Senator Tim Scott, who has been pretty quiet. Usually he's in the news, but he is now the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee. And that started with this new administration. And he drew some criticism this week because he is leading an effort to roll back caps on overdraft fees that were put in place under the Biden administration. Yes, we're overdraft fees. The banks charge you if you have, whether it's your checking account, savings account, or if you have a loan with something. um, this affects a lot of different things, but obviously the most obvious is, we all have banking of some sort. We're familiar with overdraft fees. So he wants to roll back these Biden era policy, or changes or requirements, whatever you want to call them, that these were meant to help people not get charged overdraft fees. So who votes for this? I'll tell you what his thinking is about why we should all think this is a good thing. But to me, right off the bat, I'm like, well, who wants this? I don't think any Republicans, voters, because Republican voters are different than Republicans in Congress, they do have differences. But I don't think any of the voters wanted this. I don't think even in some of the hardcore MAGA folks wanted this. It doesn't make much sense to me, or really anyone else that I've talked to. So Scott joined the House Service Committee chairman, whose name is French Hill. He's a Republican from Arkansas. He joined with him to introduce this Congressional Review Act, these resolutions, I should say, to the Congressional Review Act. And they did this back on February 13th. And the whole point is overturning a bunch of Biden administration policies and things. But specifically, this targets Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a final rule that they had put in place saying that they were capping overdraft fees at major banks and credit unions. Scott says that he's proud to lead the effort to overturn what he called the misguided rule, which, okay, so why is it misguided? Again, I'll tell you a little bit about his thinking in a moment. So, to comply, back in December, that final rule that the Biden administration's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau put into place, they said that banks and credit unions with over $10 billion in assets would have to choose one of the following options that was given by the CFFB, which is this is again under the time of Biden. Either cap their overdraft fee at $5, cap their fee at an amount that covers costs and losses of the overdraft, or the last option, disclose the terms of their overdraft loan, just like other loans, just like other credit cards. So either there's a cap on the fee or costs and losses will be covered. And worst case scenario, they disclose what their actual terms are, just like other loans and credit cards would do. These all sound like good things to me. Well, Scott and Hill argued under that the CFPB under President Biden had overstepped the agent's authority and quote routinely targeted legitimate payment incentives and practices to make headlines instead of pursuing sound policies, end quote. I'm still not sure why we need to just completely roll these all back. Maybe pitch something different that still helps out. If you can understand what Scott and Hill were trying to say, and you think they're right, oh, hey, all right, maybe I'm just not getting it. But you heard both sides. You heard what one policy was under Biden, and then those will be gone under this administration if things end up going the way Scott wants them to. So you got the information, you make the decision yourself. All right, so getting back to the cuts and all that, you see the headlines. Tons of federal funding is being cut or threatened to be cut, and it could cost a lot of South Carolina's top research universities tens of millions of dollars a year. Uh, so things that are at risk if future funding is cut off completely or deducted. Um, that funding would go to studies on a wide range of diseases, whether it's colon and lung cancer, to diabetes and obesity, to the treatment and possible prevention. Yes, that's something that is working on and is discussed as a possibility of Alzheimer's disease. All of that, all of that research funding, if that goes away, these things don't happen. Research funding into these diseases, again, I don't know who thinks this is good. All for finding waste and fraud or whatever they're supposedly looking for in the government. But how can you pull away millions of dollars in funding for programs like this? So, to put it even more local, the Medical University of South Carolina, MUSC, right here in Charleston. Of course, they have other facilities through the state now, but that's where it originated. They could see almost $4 million less per year if a reduction plan from the Trump administration is allowed to move forward. That is according to MUSC's provost, Lisa Saladin. And she told that to the school's board of trustees on February 13th. She said in that meeting that MUSC was forecasting up to $38 million in cuts. So, I mean, that's just a huge amount of money. So right now, we don't really know if these types of things are going to happen because the freeze that the Trump administration put was just like a blanket freeze on federal funding for these types of programs. A federal judge in Boston issued a temporary nationwide pause back in February 10th. And this was done because several university and medical associations actually filed a lawsuit. So that nationwide pause, that order followed a more limited pause that was issued by the same judge after 22 states, not including South Carolina, sued to stop the cuts. So there was, a limited pause. Like, so some stuff was allowed to still be frozen. So it was kind of a weird area where some things were getting funding again, some weren't. But now there's a full pause on that freeze. So at the moment, funds should be flowing how they were expected to be, although there could have been some delays and things. Um, but as I said, research universities, not just here in South Carolina, but across the country, medical associations, and story is just specific to medical funding. There are so many things, so many industries that are seeing cuts, like National Park Service. They've had a bunch of firings, layoffs, terminations, whatever it's being called, which immediately led to like long lines at certain parks that normally wouldn't have long lines, not having people available to do the sorts of activities they normally offer to people. And, so we're going to see things all over the board. And this is specific, I mentioned some pretty serious diseases up there at the top, but this affects even anything you can think of as it relates to medical. So that means mental health treatments as well. Um, Obviously a big thing in this country. A lot of talk about mental health over the last handful of years, and um, not that this country's doing a great job across the board with its mental health. Whether it's facilities or what's available or the cost, but those things that are still, all things considered, in their infancy in some ways of being studied and researched. That's important, funding that could be paused. And also some programs, not necessarily like studies like these, but we've heard about, things like Meals for Wheels could be paused. And so that relates to the medical field as well. If there's some kind of program that, maybe a research university in another state offers, through the hospital, but isn't like, it's not research, it's some kind of medical program, something helpful for the community or whatever. Those types of things would be cut too. So, as I said, as things go forward, we're going to see more and more effects. And, hopefully people will start getting the picture that, hey, it's great if you want to cut funding or, for wasteful things, or, maybe, you know, finding some waste, as they call it, where, do you really need, 25 employees? Could you get away with 24? Just little things to save money, not just pause funding or cut it for vitally important things. So, like I said, it sounds like people around the country, there's articles and podcasts and such with Trump voters who are shocked at, oh, I didn't think. I heard one person said, "Oh, I'm a veteran who works at the VA. I didn't think I would have any trouble," and he was fired. People who had something planned as their career path. This is what I'm going to be doing. This is where I'm going to be. Just having that ripped away from them. And as that starts to spread around, there's going to be more pushback, and hopefully, we'll be heard before it's too late. Another local story tied to people's concerns about funding. During a board meeting on Wednesday, several Low Country residents and CARTA riders, rather, expressed their worries about potential funding cuts. So CARTA, of course, is you've seen the buses around town. There's other services off of the buses as well, different routes and things that they offer. And yes, that is a program that gets a lot of federal funding. And so if that's cut, people are concerned, that if this is their only mode of transportation, if there's going to be less routes, if they're going to have to cancel routes, this can be very, very detrimental to many people in the community. One speaker said a lot of things seem to be really up in the air at the federal level, which is kind of what has been the theme of this whole episode. And others talked about how public transit service, it serves as a lifeline to them, which is what I was just mentioning. It's low cost transportation for people going to, say, medical appointments, work. Some people take it every day, and for whatever other reason, it's just a cheap cheaper way or best way for people to get around. Now, despite all those concerns, Mike Seekings, who is the board chairman of CARTA, he said that he remains optimistic about the future of public transit in Charleston, and however that shakes out over the years. He said that he does not believe that the way that this country is governed, that public transit is in jeopardy. So even though he's seeing all the same things we're seeing, cuts in different places, he just feels that public transit is safe. Like that would be a very bad political move. Not that some of these other ones haven't been. And so, I mean, that's great that he thinks that way. Um, I wouldn't put anything past the administration in terms of cuts and things the way it's been going, but he's the board chairman, and he is also a city councilman. He knows more than me about politics, the way things work and funding and everything, so I'm hoping he is right about that. And he did kind of, for people like me who are like, yeah, but it's great that you're optimistic, but you have no idea. He also explained to the people at the meeting that although federal funding is extremely important, I think he called it vital, for major projects period, but as it relates to public transit, he said CARTA also benefits from local financial support. So basically saying we have multiple, funding avenues. So that's helpful if if a little bit of funding is cut in the federal level, or even if it all goes away, they know they have another place to get money. He all and again, even if you're still like, I mean, do you know, like, do you have a plan that could make up for whatever you lose? Basically, he just assured that CARTA is prepared to adapt to any changes in federal funding. So hopefully he's right, and again, he would know better than most. And I would think if he was concerned about it, he would have sounded the alarm and encouraged people to contact, senators, state senators, and so on and so forth. That's another reason why I tend to believe it. Because if he thought federal cuts were coming for an organization that he is the head of, that'd be bad for him. So the fact that he believes that, number one, they're not going to lose funding, and number two, if they do, he feels like they can adapt appropriately. That's good news, and made me relax a little bit, because again, CARTA very important to many people in this area, and again, just something we hear about, happening in DC, cuts, furloughs, terminations, and then little by little, you start hearing stories in other states, and then boom, here it is in our state, people being concerned, people actually affected by this stuff. So just be prepared for more of those types of things, because it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. What a great way to end the show, right? Well, have a good weekend, yo. So sorry, I don't mean to be such a downer, but look, these are the things that are jumping out to me in the news, the things I want to talk to people about, even if it's, you guys can't respond to me right now, of course, but just getting it out. And I often find the things that I find important or interesting, you guys do too. So sorry, when it comes to politics and things, especially under this administration so far, not a lot of feel good stories. But saying that, there are a lot of great things going on in Charleston, just not enough. There's not enough meat to these things. Like every time a restaurant opens or there's an event coming up, so I don't always talk about them on the podcast. So make sure you're going to holycitycenter.com, where you can see all of the news. What was the big one today? Vampire Weekend announced that they are coming to Firefly Distillery this summer. That was a pretty big announcement that I wasn't planning on bringing to the podcast until I just mentioned it now. So, there's all sorts of good and fun and exciting things still happening in the city. So go to the site, you can see all those things, and also head to the calendar to find that next great event or restaurant opening or lecture or whatever it may be. It's all there for you. Have a great weekend. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Have a good weekend. I will be back with you all next week. Until then, good night and good luck.